All right, guys. Episode 5 of the Bell Wellness Experience. Today, I got Jim Ferlino, licensed professional counselor and owner of 501 Counseling in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Here we go. All right, guys. I'm about to bring her in. Jim Ferlino, licensed professional counselor. Here we go. Jen, how's it going?
Hello, thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come on. How's everything going?
It's going wonderful. It's Friday.
That is true. It's Friday. March Madness is getting started. Basketball finally. So,
Woohoo!
seems like we're getting this COVID thing, a bit under control. So that's good.
Oh man, time to
It's
celebrate.
been a crazy year.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start with something easy. So you're into the counseling. You do a lot of mental health. What led you to this? How did you get started in this field?
Well, it's been a little bit of a windy road, but I first just got trained to be a counselor. So I don't know how you've introduced me or if there's any information out there, but I'm an eating disorder therapist now. And so when I started, I just got generally trained. So just got my master's degree, did my internship, got licensed by the state, and then just worked in the field as a general counselor for probably 3 years or so.
Okay.
And then I got a position at Children's. So I moved to Children's Hospital, Arkansas Children's Hospital, and I got a position in their eating disorder program, their adolescent eating disorder program. And I really, when I was training to be a counselor, I didn't have any kind of idea what I wanted to do. I wasn't like, I want to be an eating disorder therapist. It just, my major professor in graduate school said this position was open. He said, I think you'd be a good fit for it. You should give it a shot. And so then I went, got hired there, then got training. And I trained under a team of people there. And then I got specialized training in the mental health, side on the mental health side of things. And so that's kind of the rest is history. Then I worked there 8 years and now I do my own thing. So.
Okay. So back a little bit. Like when you do the general counseling, like what does all that entail? Like what type of things what type of, like, I guess, clients were you seeing?
Oh gosh, a variety. So, I mean, anywhere from, depression, anxiety,
Okay.
substance abuse. I did see a little bit of eating disorders in my kind of general experience, but not much.
Okay.
Or at least I'm sure it was going on. I just didn't maybe know it or didn't at the time have the training to screen for it or ask the right questions at that time. So, but yeah, just a variety of different things. Basically, anything that came in the door, right? I worked in a community mental health center. So, they're accepting anybody who's needing some help. So,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
So with that being said, when it comes to therapy in general and really, eating disorders, like, people have their own, like, the way they think about it. So like, what are some things that you've seen as a professional that people get wrong about your occupation or about, like, your field in general?
I think that one of the things that stands out to me is just that a lot of times people think they have to be in dire crisis before they go talk to someone, right? Like they think they have to be on their deathbed, just so overwhelmed with their symptoms they can't get out of bed, or there has to be some extreme trauma or big, life event. And that if all those things are going on, go talk to someone, of course, if you're in crisis. But if you're struggling with something, if something's bothering you, just it's okay to go talk to someone. You don't have to wait till things are so bad, right? And we know, even if it's a preventative thing and you're like, I have this big life event coming up, I'm anxious about it, or I'm, feeling overwhelmed, there's no crime in going to talk to someone, even as a preventative thing.
Mhm.
So I think just that, that's a big thing. And then I think along that point in the eating disorder world, a lot of times there's a lot of myths about eating disorders. And like, for
Absolutely.
example, people think that the only the only eating disorder that's out there, like people have to look really sick, like they have to look like a skeleton, or they have to look, super thin, or they have to be purging every day in order to go get some help. And the reality is a lot of times people are suffering with an eating disorder, or just body image issues, or shame around their body or their eating habits. And even if it doesn't, you know, it's not like, you know, ruining their health at some extreme level yet. It's still important, it's still okay. It's still valid and worthy of going to talk to someone. So I think it's kind of that same, like, don't wait if you're struggling.
Yeah, that is interesting you mentioned that because when I first, so this is not a eating disorders, but back in 2012, my mom passed away, and that was like, and some of my frat brothers were saying like, you may need to go talk to somebody
Yeah,
about this.
yeah,
Obviously, not someone in your family, a professional
right.
about this.
Yeah.
And that was literally the first time I was 23 years old, and that was the first time I ever like heard about going and getting
Yeah.
help like that, because it's
Hmm.
just not something that I don't think the general public talks
No.
about it until they're, like you said, on their deathbed, or
Yeah.
really depressed and something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really that was a
Yeah.
great answer,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
And
that's
and
something we deal with.
there's still such a stigma around mental health. Like, people think like, oh, if I go talk to someone, that means I'm crazy, or that means, I'm, just, there's something wrong with me. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you at the core, right? It's just like, we all need help. Like, it's like, as a culture, it's okay to ask for help when it's like, say you're in school and you're not doing very well in school and you need a tutor, right? It's okay to go to a
Mhm.
tutor. If your car breaks down and you need some help figuring out how to fix your car, like, it's totally fine in our culture. But when it comes to like struggling with something emotionally, the culture has this whole message that like, there's something wrong with you or something, right? Because you need to go ask for help. And so the stigma is still there. It's better than it used to be, right? We're moving in the right direction, but it's still not, it's still not gone. The stigma is still not gone.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit, but I know as an entrepreneur myself how hard it is to like venture out on your own and do your own thing, especially when you're like in a position where you're making pretty good money, and when you go on your own, people think that you're insane. So, what made you want to want to start your own business?
Well, to be honest, it scared me to death to do it initially. I was like, because there's this sense when you work for someone else that like you're secure and you have a paycheck coming in and everything's really secure. Um, but I think really what pushed me into challenging myself and saying, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to take this risk, is that I felt really stagnant. Like, I think back on like the path to where I'm at right now, and I think, as I was growing up, it was like, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you work for this job for 50 years, maybe be able to retire, and then you die, right? Like, that was like the traditional path that was told to me, it was sold to me, and that I believed it. I thought there was no other option out there. So I did that. I went to school, I got the degree, I got the job, I changed jobs, I found a good job, and then I did that for a while, and I kind of got to this point where I felt very stagnant. I felt like, what's next? What, and I had this like kind of burning in me to like do more and be more and help more and be more creative. And there's a lot of limits when you work for someone else, right? When you
Mhm.
work, and especially if you work for like a big organization, there's a lot of, ladders and red tape and hoops and administration. And so even if you want to do some creative venture, or challenge yourself in various ways, it's very difficult to do, right? Because you have to get it approved by so many different people and all of that. And I just wanted to be able to challenge myself, continue to grow, and then also expand that into practice. In that, like, when I worked at Children's, it was a wonderful place to work, but it's Children's, right? I just could only treat teenagers and kids, right? And I kind of wanted to expand and do more with adults and help with, in the eating disorder world with adults and anxiety too. That's kind of my other main hat, if you will. So
Okay.
long-winded answer, but that's about it.
Oh, no, perfect answer. So as a guy that's worked with background in nutrition,
Yeah.
you know eating disorders is something that I've come across, but I didn't think of as sort of like a mental health issue, or as something like that. Is that something that you find with a lot of your clients, is like at first they didn't understand exactly the depth of stuff like anorexia and bulimia
Yeah.
and stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's because, like, disordered eating, so, like, going from diet to diet,
Mhm.
having all these ideas, like, I call in the eating disorder world, we talk about, like, diet culture. So there's this culture out there about, like, you're supposed to eat this and you're not supposed to eat that, and you're supposed to, it's all these rules around food and eating, and we're immersed in it, whether you have an eating disorder or not, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of times people internalize really disordered eating, even if they don't have a full-blown eating disorder. So it's almost like it can feel normal. Like, it can feel like, well, that's just what you're supposed to do. I'm supposed to try to lose weight. I'm supposed to, try to control my carbs or whatever it is, right? So there's always this pressure, I think, in our culture. And so people don't realize, I don't think, that they might be going down a truly unhealthy path, or they don't necessarily realize it's an issue until it gets pretty significant, where they are miserable all the time, or they start having health problems, or something like that, where there's
Mhm.
just a lot of um, just confusion around eating and around body image. So I absolutely see that.
And another thing, I think that a lot of people don't realize how serious those like things can be. Because I remember one time I was talking to someone, we were gonna do like a event together, and we were gonna counsel some clients, but neither one of us were like counselors or like therapists. And she said, "You're gonna have a lot of people here that are like they have eating disorders," and I was like, "Well, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I'm not a professional. I'm not a
Yeah,
counselor.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
you want to bring somebody else in for this event, we can do it, but that's a big deal."
Yes. Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of times there's not an awareness that it's a psychological thing with medical complications and nutrition complications. But, like,
Mhm.
at the root, it's a psychological thing. And so a lot of times people think that the problem can be solved by going and seeing a dietitian or going seeing a personal trainer. And you know, a lot of times that is, it may be symptom reduction for people. Like, maybe they, have a slight increase in mood, or they have, they might feel better about their eating habits if they go and see a nutritionist or whatever, a dietitian. But the deep underlying driving forces are really still there, right? So what I see a lot is that underneath the pursuit of controlling the body and the shape and the size and all that, or controlling eating habits, is really a deep shame, right? Like, people are really deep down feeling like there's something wrong with them. They're not good
Mhm.
enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not smart enough. Like, there's just this deep sense of inadequacy that people are feeling, and they're not sure how to deal with it. And so they try these external things, like, well, I'll get on a diet, or I'll lose 10 pounds, or I'll get, buffer, or I'll puff up, and they kind of, they focus on that because it kind of gives them like a little, like, tiny short term, like, I feel better. and then the deep is still there, right? The deep shame is still there, so it kind of comes back. So then that we see that kind of thing, but there's a lot of psychology underneath it all that a lot of times people don't, they overlook. They don't think that that part is there. They don't think it's important. They think the solution is to lose weight or to, you know, control their eating or something like that.
Yeah. Once again, great answer. You're nailing it. You're answering all the questions. This is something that just popped in my head. So,
Yeah.
like, how do you think social media plays a part in that? Because when you get on like Instagram or things, you see people posting pictures and they make sure the lighting is perfect. They make sure the angle is perfect. Body looks
Yes.
perfect. And, if someone sees it, they're like, well, I don't look that way.
Right.
How do you think social media plays these days when it comes to
Oh my
those?
gosh, just more and more, more and more of an influence, I think. And there's filters that make people look perfect, and and people are only presenting what they want you to see. And so you're not seeing the behind the scenes. Maybe they're really insecure, or maybe they're really struggling with confidence, but you don't see that on their Instagram page. You just see them looking all dolled up. And so, it really does trigger just this like comparison syndrome, if you will, where there's this just constant comparison of like, I'm not good enough, see, I'm not good enough. This person looks so much better than me. And you're constantly, people are constantly scrolling through, and you see, image after image after image, right? And it's not just on Instagram, it's TikTok. We're seeing more and more, TikTok pages where, people are, they're advocating for things. And I think sometimes they mean well, right? They're like putting out like exercise videos, or they're putting out tips about nutrition. And when you have someone who's watching those TikToks and they're insecure already, right? Or they're feeling that shame already. It just can compound on top of it, and it can trigger, just, not the healthiest of things. So, but
Yeah.
social media is huge. It impacts it all the time. And I still see a lot of teenagers, and, that's their whole world is social media. And so, I always try to encourage, like, we know people aren't going to get rid of social media, right? Everybody's going to have their social media, but it's about being intentional about who are you following? What pages are you following? What does your, social media feeds look like? Is it positive? Is it actually making you feel better? Right? Or is it just a bunch of things you watch to compare yourself and make yourself feel worse? Right? And you want to be honest with yourself, right? It's that kind of thing. So I do a lot of, we talk a lot about that, like me and the kids I see, and even the adults, right? Let's make it positive. Let's make it productive and serving you rather than not.
Yeah. Social media. Um, it's a wild phenomenon. I remember back during the elections.
Mhm.
I like I'm a rare guy that likes politics. I was a teenager, so like over the election on Twitter, I was constantly
Yep.
like that was my feed was, and I was like, hold on, I gotta get a break from this. Like this is
Yes.
taking over my life, and I can only imagine someone with going struggling with something like that, seeing all these images, how that can affect them.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's a never ending feed, right? People are constantly uh, posting stuff. And so you can just go down these rabbit holes, and the way that these websites are set up, there's certain algorithms that, it figures out what you're looking at, and it's going to give you more of that, right? So depending on what you're looking at, and I think our beliefs a lot of times center around like our experiences. And it's like, if our bubble is only, watching, perfect people on the screen, we're going to start to believe that that's all there is, right? And that we're a weird one, like we're the odd one out, that there's something wrong with us, right? And it just kind of feeds back into that loop of shame, and it can really drive a lot of unhealthy things from there.
Yeah. So You and I spoke back during last year when the pandemic first started. Right when I, had left Children's, and that was right when we were just learning about what was going on with the pandemic. But
Mhm.
how has the pandemic like affected your business? Has it like helped because Zoom has become a bigger thing, or has it hurt you
Yeah,
because you couldn't see as
I
many people in person?
I think it's helped. I think when the pandemic first started, the governor and the powers that be, if you will, they put out basically some rules that the insurance companies had to pay for telehealth services, so they couldn't discriminate against it. Like because before that, not all medication or not all insurance plans covered telehealth. And even if they did cover telehealth, they usually reimbursed at a lower rate. And so they basically made that not an issue anymore. And so we were able to provide all of our services online, and it didn't affect us as far as from a financial standpoint. And then we could provide the service, right, in a safe manner. And so everything shifted online. I still see 100% telehealth. I'll probably be transitioning in June back to some in person, but in that way, it didn't affect me at all. And then the demand increased for services because there's just been so much more stress for
Mhm.
many people because of COVID, whether they lost loved ones due to COVID or just they had a lot of significant life changes, whether they lost their job, whether they just managing all the stress of like their kids being home from school or and that kind of thing. So there's just been a lot of stress, and so that's increased the demand for services. So not only was the demand higher, we were able to transition everything online smooth and no problems. So it's been really good.
Is the online thing something you plan on doing more in the future? Like, because like once the pandemic ends, do you still plan on doing a lot of like services online, a lot of telehealth online?
Yeah, I think, obviously I personally like in person more
Mhm.
just because I feel more connected to people and I think I can, yeah, I just like it personally better.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's been that different. Other than just not being with people. And so I think for many of my clients, they like it, they prefer it because it's convenient, right? They don't have to think about travel time. So it's like if you have a 1 o'clock appointment with me, you don't have to think about, okay, I got to set aside 20 minutes to drive to the office. Then I got to set aside 20 minutes to drive back to my workplace or my school or my house. And so it doesn't take as long to devote to it because you're not dealing with all that extra stuff. So I think people really like it in that way. It's very convenient. They get to kind of um, log on from wherever they are. Obviously, I require a private space, so it's not like we're trying to do therapy with 10 people in the room and all listening and things like that. But for the most part, they get to pick where they log in from. So I think I probably will. Now I don't know when the rules for insurance companies will change, right?
Yeah.
I think the governor extended it another month. And so I think the end of April, I'm not sure. But then it'll just, I think that'll determine, at least for my clients who have insurance, that'll determine what method we use.
Awesome. So, have you seen like any difference with your clients, like being because I know like since the pandemic has been going on, I've been taking tests and stuff like that, and people testing centers have allowed to have a proctored site at your house, so that's made me more comfortable taking
Yeah.
tests because I'm like in my home,
Yeah.
I can be in my pajamas. Have you seen like any of your clients like be more comfortable being in their home setting but still being able to see you? It's not like because like when I go to the doctor, something like my blood pressure may go up, but my blood pressure is fine,
Yes.
otherwise. It's
Right,
just
right,
being,
right.
have you seen that maybe your clients are more comfortable in opening up more, being at home, but still being able to see you?
I think so. And I think it's also helpful therapeutically because sometimes I get a different. take on what's going on in their life, right? Like if I'm sitting there and we're talking and, they're in their bedroom and I notice that it's like pitch black and, I can barely see them and they're laying in bed and it's kind of like, and they're coming in for depression, right? It's like, okay, I can see kind of how you live, right? And not that it's always like that, but like there's sometimes you just get a sense for what kind of environment they're in, and that helps from a therapeutic end of like what to recommend or what we need to talk about that I might not see in the office.
Okay.
So that I think is interesting. Um, I think it could work both ways, right? Because like getting up and getting to the office can sometimes help their mood and help them kind of tap into a different mindset. And then we can kind of talk about how it varies and how it's different. And then they can kind of see, oh, well, maybe I need to change my environment around a little bit. So it can work both ways. But I think that there is definitely like a comfort level there too.
Yeah. So I'm big into, mental health. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm hoping, the world, like it becomes more like mental health issues and stuff like this becomes more prevalent. So with that being said, I hopefully there's a lot more people going into this field. What's some advice that you would give someone younger in the field, or what's some advice you would give the 18, 19, 20-year old Jen Ferlino?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I don't know. I feel like I'm not the only one that felt like the only like path was the traditional path. Like I just feel like that's very like cultural, at least in America, of like this is just what you're supposed to do. Like you go to school, you get a job, and then you work there for a while, and then you hopefully retire. Like, and I thought that was fine and great when I was young. And I thought it was important that I got out and did that and experienced, the world under somebody older and things like that. But I think just that really, I think if someone had mentored me and said, hey, if you get to a point where you feel stagnant in this traditional route, like it's not the only thing. Like there's so many options in life that you can do. It's like my husband's an electrician. He didn't go to school. I mean, he went to school to be an electrician, but he didn't go to like your traditional 4-year college and that kind of thing. And he, is doing great for himself. And so it's just like you don't necessarily have to do the traditional route to still like do well in life. And you know, challenging yourself is scary, but it oftentimes leads to so many greater things. So I think just about like, don't be stagnant, challenge yourself. You don't have to necessarily take the traditional path. And sometimes the non-traditional path gets you to a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, speaking of other entrepreneurs, so like you told the way you got into it. I did like a totally different. So the reason I got into being an entrepreneur is because like when I first got out of college, I couldn't find a job, so I didn't really have a choice. And then once I sort of got my business sort of established, I realized there was more I needed to learn. So I went and took another job, and
Yeah.
worked that
Yeah.
job, learned another, because I was a personal trainer. I worked at like a rec center sort of thing, but I still did things online. But I wanted like
Oh,
corporate sort of experience. That's how I ended up at Children's. So I did
oh,
that, and then like got back to doing my own thing, but just happened to be inside of a pandemic. So there's a lot of different routes you can take to entrepreneurship.
yeah. Oh, definitely. That's true. Right. Again, there's like not one way,
Yeah.
like there's not one way to do life.
Yeah, and if you read, a lot of books with, because I like to read. I'm sure you
Me
like to read a
too.
lot too. There's not two people that have the same story venturing into, from like a guy like a Jeff Bezos to,
Yep.
they everybody has like different paths. They
Mhm.
they go down, and as long as you're
Yeah,
happy,
exactly.
that's the good thing. But one thing people need to realize is like, as long as you have a good reputation and you leave a job at a good space, you can always go back and get a job. So you should, if you're thinking about trying it, it's something you should definitely try your own thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can always go back and get a job. And so it's like, provided, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think, entrepreneurship, it seems to me like, as far as advice, to kind of go back to your question about entrepreneurs, um, I think niching down is important. I think about my path, and like, there's nothing wrong with generalists. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but I just feel like it's been easier for me to fill my practice, to get my name out there, to advocate for my mission and cause and all of that, having a specific focus, right?
Mhm.
Rather than saying, hey, I treat every DSM-5 diagnosis, to like, here's my main thing, eating disorders, anxiety. So they tend to go together. Not always, right? You can have people with anxiety disorders without eating disorders and vice versa, but they tend to go together. And so niching down is really important. And I think that that can be a starting out entrepreneurship advice. Like, when you're starting out, you know, figure out kind of who your audience is and how you want to speak to them specifically. But if you already have that, I think some really good advice is always be growing personally, right? Like, just, I'm a big fan of morning routines. I think getting up before you need to do your life, like if you need to be at work at 8, don't get up at 7:55, right, and run out the door. Don't get up at 7:30 if you have to leave at 7:31, right? Because you're going to feel behind to start the day, and it's going to be stressing you, right? Get up early, and intentionally spend some time, not just get up and watch TV that's mindless. Get up early and spend some time on personal growth, whether that be exercising, whether that be meditating, whether that be journaling, whether that be prayer, whatever speaks to you, but is intentionally a personal growth practice. I think that just, it sets the rest of the day, right? And I think that that is, I would say, good advice for anyone, but especially entrepreneurs, and especially if you've already niched down, you already got that part down. Then it's about like really getting yourself in order. And I think your business is a lot easier to get in order when you're in order. I mean, I think that's just kind of my mindset, and I advise that.
That's a great point. When I worked at Children's, I used to have to be at work at 5:30. But I would always get there at 5 o'clock. I would get there at my
Yeah.
desk at 5 o'clock because I wanted that time for myself.
Yep.
I would read a scripture every morning just to get because I'm the type of person, like, if I have to rush and do something, it's gonna throw
Yes.
me off. Like, it's gonna completely
Exactly.
throw my whole day off. So I got to a
Exactly.
point where I would literally get to work 30 minutes early just to have
Yes.
like me time, I would say,
Yes.
to get
Yes.
ready.
And I know personally I've learned the value of this since I've become a mom, because I feel like, the transition to motherhood for me was challenging. It was always challenging, but it was definitely challenging for me because I felt like for a while I lost myself, right? It was like always about what the baby needs, what my family needs, what do I need to do for my job or my business. And it was like, I felt like I had no time for just developing me or just connecting with myself. And I just feel like the first part of the day is the best. And that's just my personal preference. Because I think it would be very different if I waited till the end of the day for me time. I would already feel like drained and just blah. But if I start that way, it's like I go into my day just already centered and grounded, and it just works out better. So,
Yeah. It's okay to be selfish sometimes as long as that selfishness isn't affecting other people negatively. I think a lot of times we, especially as parents, we want to give our kids all of our attention, or we want to give our spouse all of our attention. We got to have time for ourselves, or we're not going to be able to give them the attention they need or deserve because we're going to be burnt out.
that's a great point. Like, you're absolutely right about that. And I think if you've ever been burned out, you know what this feels like. It's like, it's that saying of like, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if you are drained, if you have nothing left to give, or you're starting, like you said, you're starting your day like kind of thrown off, then it's just, you're off balance. And then it makes it harder to be as effective, as efficient in whatever tasks you're focusing your energy on. And I know this is something that like is a real kind of pop term out there, like with self-care, like go get your nails done and go, take a bubble bath and make time for you. And it's like, we always hear this, like we get these messages and stuff. But, I know with the transition to motherhood, for me, it's like I forgot all that or something. I don't know. So it's like if I can do it first thing in the morning before anything has the potential to pull me away, then it's like it's just this stability. So, but yeah.
You said something earlier was a really good point about like finding your specific like niche or like demographic. Um, a lot of times I think entrepreneurs need to realize what they think that they're good at, they aren't actually the best at, and they'll find something else. Because when I first got into personal training, like my goal was to train athletes. That's all I wanted to do was train athletes, football, basketball, track, whatever. But like 94% of my clients are like women, postnatal. That's my niche, and it's not something I ever thought I would be good at. But that's what I do, and I just
It's
happened to get into it, and I
yeah.
mean, I love it now.
It's such an evolution. Like I think, and that's one of the things I love about entrepreneurship is that it's like this creative, evolving, thing. I don't know what else to say other than
Mhm.
thing, but like it's like you go in and you think you're going to do this one thing, and then you learn more about something else, and you kind of navigate through. It's kind of like I didn't have any idea I was going to do eating disorders when I started out. Like it wasn't a personal desire for me when I first became a counselor. But I learned that I really enjoyed treating the population. And then, I was working with, under 18, essentially people with eating disorders. And then it's kind of like I started to really get more interested in, adult treatments and like, how do you treat adults with these things? And so it's interesting how it just kind of ebbs and flows and morphs, and you learn, maybe I have better skills here, maybe I have better skills there, and try not to be so rigid into like I have to do this one thing, this is what I set out to do. Like it's okay to have things change and grow, and it's really cool. That's awesome about your story.
Yeah. So, I want to touch back on you mentioned anxiety, like you have experience with that. I don't have anxiety, but I know a lot of people that suffer from anxiety. Um, is this something that can be triggered by like a certain event, or can people like wake up out of nowhere and just feel, have anxiety and not know that's exactly what it is?
I think both. I certainly think I've seen both presentations. Like, I hear a lot when people come in with like panic attacks. They come in because they've had panic attacks or they're having panic attacks, and it's frightening. More times than not, you'll ask someone with a panic attack, "Well, what triggered it? What was going on?" And they say, "I don't know." They have no idea. They're like, "I was sleeping. I shot out of my sleep in a panic attack." And that can be very frightening and disconcerting to people. Like they're like, I'm losing control. I don't even know what's going on with my body. Right. But, through therapy and through treatments, there's a lot of uncovering of like the panic cycle in those situations. Right. In anxiety, there's many different presentations.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I think people can really have no idea that that's what's going on. Right. Especially if they don't have any exposure to mental health topics, or like was something like maybe like in their family growing up nobody ever talked about mental health, or they don't hang out with anybody who talks about mental health. They may not be thinking of that, right? They may just, or they've dealt with it for so long it feels like it's normal,
Mhm.
right? And so they don't question it, they just think this is just who I am, right? And then sometimes it's not until, like you said, a situational trigger, something that happened in life. They lost someone they loved. Uh, they, had a big life transition. Some extra demand on them, and then it kind of comes out. But it can be both. It can be both.
Do you feel like sort of like childhood, the way people are brought up can contribute to that? Because maybe like you have like some issues that are like buried, and then like an issue as an adult can like you all of a
Yes,
sudden just
trigger.
remember that again and it just triggers it. Do you see that a lot or
Oh
not a lot?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, all the way from like, it could be childhood stuff like with your parents. It could be childhood stuff with like school, like if you've experienced bullying, for example. Like, so say like you experienced some bullying in school and then you're sitting in a meeting at work and a coworker gave you a look and it triggers it, and then all of a sudden you're like shot back to when you were in third grade. Like we can
Mhm.
have those triggers that happen obviously today, but that triggers something that's deep, that has never been resolved, or that was really traumatic or wounding when we were a kid, right? So that happens all the time. I would say more times than not. um,
Yeah, so I have one more off space
that's fine, I don't care, ask me anything.
that I just thought. So you can be as vague or as specific about this as you want. Over the past year, we've seen a lot of people sort of like disagree with experts and scientists about medication and vaccines and all that type of thing. I personally think these guys know what they're doing. I didn't go in that field for a reason, so I'm going to trust them.
Yeah.
When it comes to like medication and your clients like that, where are you on that? Because there are some people that don't think you need any medication. You can just talk to people or exercise, and you don't they just don't like, they think medicine is bad for you. So where are you on that sort of thing?
I think it's person specific as to what they need, right? Like,
Mhm.
just from a professional standpoint, I think that medications have their place. I think there are some people that there does not it doesn't matter how much exercise they do, it doesn't matter how much they change their diet, how much they regulate their sleep, do all those like kind of holistic basic things, they're still going to be depressed, right? Like there's some people that I think need the extra help, and that targets like their biology in maybe a more direct way than some of the behavioral interventions. Now, I'm not a pill pusher. If I were, I
Yeah.
would have been a psychiatrist, right? Like
Yeah.
I would have been in the psychiatry world where that's what they do, is they prescribe medication, right? Now, not all psychiatrists are maybe pill pushers in the sense that
Yeah.
like they don't recognize the value of behavioral interventions, because they do. But I am a therapist because I really enjoy focusing on behavioral interventions. But like I said, I think that there's definitely a place for the medication, and but if I have a client coming in and I think they might benefit from an evaluation for medication, I am going to recommend that. And if they say no, that's their choice, right? And I'm still going to work with them, right? I'm not going to be like, well, until you take medicine, I'm not going to see you, right? Like, no. So I think it's just, you have to balance, like you recommend, and then balance, how comfortable do they feel, and what are their
Yeah.
concerns, and that kind of thing.
That's great. So where are you wanting your business to go and accomplish in the future? Do you want to like open up more places? Do you want to have more of a presence like online? Do you want like a franchise? Like what is something you want your business to
Oh my
accomplish?
gosh. See, like I said before, I love the like creative aspect of having a business, and all the possibilities that you can take your own business. But I think there's such a need for eating disorder treatment. We don't have many specialized places for people to go who need help, and I want to expand that. I want to at some point maybe hire on some more clinicians who also really enjoy treating eating disorders, and so we can offer more help, right?
Hmm.
um, And I think that's one of my longer term goals. And then another thing that's just more on like the solo end of things is I really think that it would be helpful to have more like therapy supplements. And what I mean by that is like, you go and you see your counselor once a week or whatever, and then you leave, and then you have all these hours in between your, sessions where, you're kind of out on your own. And I really like the idea of like creating products or content that can help them in between sessions. So like, for example, like specialized meditations. There's a lot of meditations out there. Like there's tons of apps and things, but there's not a lot of specialized meditations that have to do with like addressing specific aspects of somebody's struggle. So like with an eating disorder, your body image and shame around the body is really, really central. And meditations that can help people make peace with that, I think, and then they can practice in between sessions so that they're really practicing these skills. I'd love to create more around that, and I already do. I already give my clients stuff, but like on a more like scaled basis, where it can even be adapted for like you're a personal trainer. Like you may have a client come in and they express to you like, okay, I'm really working hard with my exercises that you're giving me to do, but I have this kind of nagging issue of like, I'm really unhappy with my body, even though we're working hard on it. Right. And what else can I do? And so, not that you become the counselor or anything, but that there's some supplements that you can have access to that might be able to help, in addition to recommending counseling or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm really wanting to maybe do more with that longer term.
Awesome. So where do people find you?
Well, I kind of do business as 501 counseling, and I share this space with my colleague Katie Short. And so we have a website, 501counseling.com. You can always search my name on Psychology Today, and I have a profile up on there, and you can read about what I do and everything else. So that's about it.
All right, that sounds great. So yeah, Jen, thank you so much. This was great. I learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners did too, because I mean
Yeah.
I really really enjoy you being very specific about some of the issues, and not only with the eating disorders and stuff like that, but also just entrepreneurship in general. So I
Yes.
really hope people pay attention and listen. And yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much, Charles. We'll talk to you later.
All right, you enjoy yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was Jim Ferlino, 501 Counseling. If you like this episode, like, subscribe, share. This is episode 5, Bell Wellness Experience. We'll see you later.